creator has a vision, and our job is to say, we don't want to say no. We want to say, we can do this, and then we figure out a way. And if we can't technically, then we start working the problem, one thing at a time, figuring out what product, either if it doesn't exist, let's develop it. If we need to buy it or have a manufacturer build it, let's work it to where we don't have to tell a producer we can't do that.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastically, Josh. And you?
It's going very well. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely.
Question.
Yes.
You've been to theme parks, right?
Once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've probably had some surprise and delight moments occur at some points, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Have any of those surprise and delight moments come through audio and or video and or lights and or sounds?
I'm going to say yes. But I think I might have a different lens than other people.
You are an audio guy, and you have an education in it.
I've studied audio. I have a degree in audio engineering. So yes, maybe that's what I'm looking for. I will tell you that one of my first things that pops to mind is for a show that's no longer there, which was Muppets 4D. And I remember sitting in that theater in a couple of different spots and thinking, man, this sounds good. Like thinking about like the frequency response. This is going to get nerdy, but like the frequency response and the highs and the lows, the mids, the voices, the music, the surround of it all. And especially for the production at the time, how crisp and clear it was, but also how powerful it was. And I just loved the sound of that show. So that might be a bit of a surprise and delight. And so anytime I'm in a show like that, or even in a ride queue or any place where I'm kind of enveloped in the experience, I'm paying attention to the sound. So I may not be the demographic you're looking for, but the answer is absolutely yes.
Well, even though I appreciate that response, because I, A, dearly miss Muppet Vision 3D, and B, can appreciate what you saw in it that I overlooked, because to me, all I knew is just that it worked, right? I would have only noticed it if it didn't sound good, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you ask about sound?
Well, I have had a surprise and delight moment through audio and or video and or light and or sound. Well, maybe audio and sound are the same thing, so it's maybe video and light. I don't. Anyway, I went to Disneyland recently. I don't know if you knew that.
I've heard something.
In particular, I went to Cars Land. and have you ever seen the movie Cars?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Okay.
I've not seen the whole thing.
Okay, so you may not remember this part of the movie where Lightning McQueen helps to fix up the whole town of Radiator Springs, and then his final act that all he had to do was fix the road, but then he helped everybody out in town. But then Sally, who really missed what the town looked like back in its heyday, before the interstate drove by and they lost a lot of the drive-through traffic because people never mind. Was that the town was kind of in its glory with the neon lights, and it felt very, I don't know, very like retro. So he helped to restore all that to the town. And then as the sun goes down, he surprises Sally and he turns on all the lights. And then, you know the song Shaboom by the Chords?
If I say yes or no, does it matter to the story?
I could sing it for you if you'd like. Anyway, the song comes on in the movie, and everyone is very happy and has this very like calm, peaceful night in the street, which ultimately gets interrupted. But uh, in Cars Land at Disney California Adventure, uh, they do that at dusk, and so we timed it accordingly that we got to California. Got actually it was after dinner. We were about to go to bed. We're like, no, let's go back to California Adventure. Let's go back to Cars Land in Radiator Springs, and we'll be there on Route 66 at dusk, where at the precise minute that the sun sets the neon lights come on, and then the song Shaboom plays perfectly, as if I'm sitting at home watching it in my basement surround sound here, right?
Yeah.
It sounds absolute perfect. Uh, and then some of the cars kind of drive through, but then everybody there is having a what I think I would call like the most gentle dance party that you could imagine at Disney. And getting to experience that was my surprise and delight through AV.
Okay, very nice. You know what? I thought of another one that I'd love to share because it was just very recent. The one with Muppets was many years ago. I went out to the Winchester Mystery House, as I mentioned, right? We just had Walter on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I got to go out and take the tour of the mansion, the Winchester Mystery House. And there is a scene, or there's a part of the tour where you're stopping in Sarah Winchester's old bedroom, the bedroom that was used before the 1906 earthquake. Well, in that room, this was my favorite room, they had a sound effect of the earthquake. And the tour guide, they would hit a little button to trigger it at the right time, and then they would just stand back and just let this sound envelop the whole room. And they said, like that lasted in real life, that lasted 40 seconds, but this was only 20 seconds. And to stand there and feel the room shake and hear that and imagine what must have been like to go through that was pretty incredible, pretty intense. So that was an absolute surprise and delight. And I remember talking to some of the tour guides afterwards and just talking about that was like my favorite room. And again, I'm an audio guy, so that makes sense. But also the way they incorporated the sound effect with the story and with the part of the tour that they were sharing, I just thought was seamless.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I was surprised and delighted.
Both. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
not all surprises are delightful. I talk about that a lot.
that's right.
Anyway,
Yes.
our guest today is Evan Hall, Chief of Big Ideas for Forward Thinking Designs, which is a company that makes the complex feel simple and the future feel effortless. And they create surprise and delight moments through AV.
Absolutely. And a big part of their expertise is through show control, right? And I love the way he described it. So I'm not going to steal the thunder, but he described show control in a way that to me made it very, very very easy to understand. And really, it's about having one central control for all the things that you're seeing and even some of the things you're not seeing. Maybe it's something you're hearing or feeling or just part of the thing that makes the show happen. So what they do is they get to do that with lots of different themed entertainment venues and theme parks and all the things that we get to talk about.
Yeah, totally. And like I mentioned, he's the chief of big ideas. That was a topic in and of itself, not just of the title, but also what it means to have the big ideas, but also to really to foster them as well, of kind of planting the spark of the idea and then getting out of the way. So we got to hear about the ideation and the innovation process of the company as well.
So should we take control of this show and get on to this interview with Evan?
That's a great idea. Hey, Evan, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We are so excited to have you on today. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to dive into all things forward thinking. But before we do that, just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and your career.
Sure. Sure. So, I grew up and both my parents were touring musicians. That's how we got our start. And then, they moved on to that into the technical entertainment space. And we found ourselves at Disney. They both worked at Disney and I followed that career path and started selling popcorn, then moved in as a technician and did shows, did some Disney tours. Then from there, kind of branched out, got a lot more experience, then started doing a lot of installations in the themed entertainment market. Then from there, I realized one day that there are parts of the install projects that we really, really enjoyed doing. And we started a company based on just those things instead. Most AV integrators, kind of have to pick up everything from design to installation to procurement to the whole thing. And what we really, really loved was just the creating the magic and programming the projects, and then that's what launched our company.
And so can you talk, I know that a lot of things that you are doing or have done are under NDA, but can you give us a little sense of some of the things or the type of work or the scope of work that you might do?
Sure. It's everything from, really small, intimate meet and greets with, interactives that light up and play music to, very large park-wide audio and video control systems. Every single speaker inside of a theme park, it can be routed through a system that we once designed or programmed or installed, those kinds of things. So it really is the gamut, but anything technology, anything AV, anything that is going to surprise or delight, that's really what gets our team super excited on the projects. That we don't really focus on conference rooms and like the normal workday stuff that you see so much, AV equipment in. It's really entertainment. It's a show. It's an attraction. It's entertainment. It's a destination project is really what our team really loves doing and what we specialize in.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit more about kind of the company's origin story? And you talk about
Sure.
kind of, launching the company. I'm curious kind of maybe what the catalyst was and maybe what those early days were like.
Sure. I did a lot of, touring audio, corporate audio, which was really great because, it was a springboard to how do you design something really complex and get it out very quickly. I had an opportunity to join an integration team that was working on a big Disney project. They knew I had tons of experience at Disney. They knew that I knew the teams there. It would just be a really easy, jumping off point for me, kind of getting out of that market back into the installation market. And, I was faced with a product that didn't exist. The company flew me out and said, "Hey, here's this thing. Disney really wants to use it. We think it's going to be really cool." I saw a bunch of circuit boards on a table and was like, from here, this product honestly, propelled our company as the specialist with this product. So we installed it on a large project, the largest at its time at scale. It was, 4,000 inputs, 4,000 outputs. That's, 4,000 microphones and speakers and all of those things all connected into one big, massive control system and AV system that then routed everything across the project. And when that was completed, we realized that it was this new technology. It was definitely going to move in this direction. So the team I was with at that time said, we really could focus just on this single product and build a company around it and support other companies as they move forward with this product, since it was so new at the time. And develop things outside of that platform that connected to it. So that was really the catalyst. And, we love our customers, and every time a customer's like, I need you on this project. We didn't have enough people. It's like, well, let's get some more people. And the company just grew organically in that way.
So, Evan, for somebody like me who has some recording engineering background, when I hear 4,000 microphones and 4,000 inputs, like that's mind-boggling. So,
Yeah.
I can just imagine the track sheet for that. But
100%. Yeah. Keeping that all organized, deciphering it and then figuring out what, that's honestly the magic of what our team does is just, manage all that data. So you can, at the end of the day, an end user can just magically know, oh, well, here's a button and that's what that does,
Yeah. Well, and you said when you founded the company, you did it based on things that you liked to do, right? Because
Yeah.
there's all sorts of
100%.
facets of all sorts of businesses that are things you don't like to do. Did you ever find that things started to creep into those other areas, or you were being asked to do those things, or how'd you keep it focused on just those things that you enjoy?
And I wish we could, in all honesty, because as an entrepreneur, what I've learned is we started out saying this is who we are, this is what we do, and the customers would say we need more of your scope. And the reality is that in this market space, what we're programming and what we're doing, they're all black boxes. They literally can do anything, and it really kind of comes down to one, how do we go through the process with the customer to understand what they want. But then, what do we create from there? And at the end of the day, what we're finding is that, the integration is literally just a bunch of black boxes. It's really the show control that is, architecting and designing everything under the hood, that is, creating, what we do. So yeah.
Evan, as you're describing this here, I can't help but think how, and one of the great things about our industry is that there is so much that happens behind the scenes that the guest
Yeah.
doesn't see, but
Yeah.
they sense, they feel it, they experience it, and there's so much behind the scenes that makes it look effortless or makes it look like
Sure.
somebody flipped on a switch and everything was just there. That's, all aspect of, of
100%.
the experience. And I'm curious for those who maybe don't have necessarily the technical proficiency, can you share kind of through the lens of the guest? You've got some posters behind you advertising some projects.
Sure.
I wonder if you could kind of walk through what does the guest experience it is the output of those 4,000 inputs and 4,000 outputs and
Sure,
all
sure.
that.
Yeah. So for us, it really starts with, the producer, the story, close your eyes. What do you want the guest to see? How do they walk in? What we want to do is be transparent completely. We don't want them to see any of our tech. We don't want to see how it works. We don't want to show that an actor has to turn something on or turn something off. It needs to all automatically happen. So that's our goal, right? Transparency is key, for what we do. Other than that, you show the magic and you show the illusion. So yeah, to answer your question, we step through, a creator has a vision, and our job is to say, we don't want to say no. We want to say, we can do this, and then we figure out a way. And if we can't technically, then we start working the problem, one thing at a time, figuring out what product, either if it doesn't exist, let's develop it. If we need to buy it or have a manufacturer build it, let's work it to where we don't have to tell a producer we can't do that, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Evan, can you talk a little bit more about, again, kind of in layman's terms, show control?
Sure.
And kind of what that means, and maybe even to Josh's point from the guest perspective, what that end result might even look like.
Sure. So I think the best way to really describe it is, in the analogy of a conductor. You've got a full orchestra, you've got a lot of different instruments, you have a lot of different players. Some of those instruments are the same, but they're playing different things. And that's very much, how we approach control systems. We've got other systems that may have their own controller. We have other, even other completely other departments that we're talking to at the end of the day. But we have a conductor, and he's got a score, and he's got a vision from a producer, and his job is to say, violins start and cellos start. This is what you're playing. This is when you're playing it, and follow my baton. And that's ultimately, if you bubble it down, that's what show control is. I've got a conductor, I have a show, we're running it, and I have lots of different characters and actors and musicians all playing in harmony and unison, and that's the vision, right? And it can be all kinds of stuff. There's stuff that you wouldn't even think about. We're working on a project right now where, it's an outdoor project. There are safety concerns in the skies with pilots and helicopters, and we need to protect them legally. And we're using a system that is monitoring airplanes in the airspace of the show, and that then is attached to the show control system to where it would turn off devices in the event that, an airplane was in that area. Things like that doesn't seem like a show control thing. It is very much, a show control thing. It can stop the show, or in this case, turn some stuff off.
So there's no shortage of moving parts when it comes to
never. No, the more the better.
Yeah. How do those conversations then work with the client? Because I've got to imagine that there's probably a big education piece that maybe the client wants to do something, but you're coming in saying, well, we need to look at so many of these variable factors
Sure.
that maybe the client isn't necessarily thinking of because they want XYZ end product.
Sure. Yeah, we handle that two different ways. There are times where we listen and we don't say anything, and we just go do it in the background. They don't, we want to keep a producer and a director highly focused on their show. They tell us their vision. We go away. We're ready for tech rehearsals, or ready to say, here's your preview, and did we nail it? Then there's other times where we have technical directors who are very, very technical and want to know every step of the way and want to really get into the weeds. And, we love that too. It really kind of comes down to the relationship of the producer, and because at the end of the day, we don't want to cloud any of their direction as far as how we approach something, how we execute something. At the end of the day, we want to, they want this to go away, and with a poof of smoke, our job is to make that as transparent as possible.
Yeah, it's the
But
magic,
it's
in other words, like you said before.
100%. It's 100%. But like it's really fun, and we've got just such a vast variety of customers. We've got really, really technical ones that get in the weeds deeper than we would ever get in, and they tell us here's exactly how we want to do it. And then we've got customers who are like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but what I do want to do is I want to walk in the room and this magically happen, and we're like, we have you, which is really fun, and which our team loves, because we have such a diverse, we have customers who are like, I just need you to solve it. And then there's customers who's like, I have a solution, I need you to execute it.
So, Evan, you have a really interesting title, the Chief of Big Ideas. So, can you talk to us a little bit about where that came from?
Sure. So when we were starting the company, me and some of our employees, we've all worked for companies like everyone, and a lot of them were corporate companies with corporate titles, and we were in the entertainment business. And it's like, we're in the entertainment business, and what we do is fun, and it should be fun. It should never be boring, and we should be proud of what we do. And so we went through a whole charrette, right, of fun titles and names that did spell out what we do. I mean, at the end of the day, I am at the head of the company. Melanie, our CFO, my wife, also is actually the owner. It's a woman-owned business. I am her second. So that makes me a chief. And then at the end of the day, it all starts with an idea. We love to sit in these rooms and say, what's your big idea? Where do we go? And then from there, once the ball gets rolling, I mean, it's you can't stop it. So, it's someone's got to have the big ideas. We have a very technical team, and they want technical answers. So it's my job to say, I think we should start figuring out the science here. And that's kind of where I sit. But we have creators and collaborators and masterminds, and so we wanted to have fun with our titles, and just remind everybody that we're here to entertain people.
You mentioned Melanie, and you mentioned that the company is a woman-owned company, and I'm wondering if maybe you can expand on really the importance of that, and how she enforced opening for
Sure.
that as well.
Sure. So, I mean, I'll start with her title because I think it's the most important. So her title is the executive of no. So without someone saying no and the reality check, we would all be in a lot of trouble, because somebody's got to keep, a compass. Someone's got to be north. And at the end of the day, she says yes a lot, but when she says no, it's because, of lots of good reasons. But that is her, her role. She came from an entertainment background. She's a master's in arts. Without her, like I said, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Evan, I know for a lot of people, it can be hard to say no, right?
Yeah,
If you hear a good
exactly.
idea or, whatever.
100%.
So by having the title executive of no, does that, I don't want to say make it easier for her to say no, but does it make it more palatable for the team when she says no, like she means it, like we'll find another way?
Sure. It ultimately comes down to, on the engineering side and the design side and the creative side, we don't want to say no. But we do that because we have passion. And when you've got someone looking at the books and the timeline and the reality of stuff, somebody's got to be that anchor. So at the end of the day, we didn't want everyone to have to play two roles. We want everyone on the team to, the customer has an idea, let's execute it. But when the customer comes back and says, well, I have no money and we have to, this big idea has to happen, Melanie's there to say, there's no money. So let's start working that problem. How do we work that problem? Where do we get the money? How do we fundraise? What is it? What is the path? Um, that's her job, the realist.
You mentioned kind of going back to the chief of big ideas and talking about kind of the ideation process. I'm wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about uh, fostering ideas from kind of the innovative standpoint and being able to sift through ideas that then go into execution and just maybe just the overall innovation process in
Sure,
the company.
sure. I mean, so to be completely honest, we have an amazing team, and it's never been, my place to come up with an idea. It's, always been my place to come up with a spark of an idea, and then honestly get out of the way. And lead, allow a runway for the team to then work through the idea and work through the creative process, whether or not it's with the customer or by ourselves, and then role play through if I was an end user, how would I walk up to this and understand it? Technically, our team can come up with things that are super technical, but at the end of the day, it's a high school graduate who's on an internship or a college internship who's operating it. So we have to understand who our user is, who's inheriting what we do, how long it's being. So that team thinks through all of those with that mindset. And works through the creative process. In all honesty, there isn't really an FTD workflow to that. It's kind of we start at the beginning and we start peeling the layers of the onion back and see where it takes us.
I'm just laughing because Josh and I use that phrase all the time, peel back the onion.
Yeah,
So
it's perfect. Yeah.
it works in so many areas. I'm curious if we can dive into something that's on your website where you say we make the complex feel simple and the future feel effortless. Can you
Yeah.
kind of walk us through that a little bit more?
Sure. So, what we really do well is master plan. And you talk about how theme parks get master planned, and it's roughly the same thing, right? It's a big canvas, and we know today we can do these things, and this is what today's goal is. But this is an investment. All of these projects, the things that we do, even seasonal things, I mean, it's an investment that may repeat itself from year to year. And everybody wants a little more. The customer is always asking for more. Epic was built and they immediately have turned around and said, let's build more, So, I mean, we live in this world where expansion is key. What we are developing, the platforms we are using, like I said earlier, they're a black box. It's a software platform that we sit and we start at a blank sheet, and we start typing lines of code. So when, we start architecting these things, we have to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, we want the customer to walk in and it turn on auto magically, or they hit a button, and that's simple. But when they buy this thing and they say, this is great, I want more. Well, we don't want to be standing there and saying, yeah, we're gonna have to rip all this out and we're gonna need this new thing. Like, nobody wants that, So we always go in the mindset of what are we doing, day two, because there's always something. Someone's gonna have a creative spark once they see it. I mean, we can do all of these things in 3D, but until you're in the space, you really don't know what you have until you're in it, and that's, it's like, oh, we should have done this. It's like, oh, well, we can do that. Yeah, we've planned for some things. You said you didn't think you needed that. Well, we at least it's prepared. That's kind of that's our mantra here.
Mhm.
That's really interesting. And I'm thinking about, kind of my early days as being a ride operator. And you talk about the, high school graduate or college student on an intern, they're the ones who are using the systems. And I remember and this had more to do with ride control systems of working on one ride, and then I went to another ride that was built like 3 years later, and it just had a little bit of a newer system. And I distinctly remember thinking, wow, this is actually much easier to
Yeah.
operate than the other ride. It's as 18, 19 years old of just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm operating very complex, heavy machinery where there's a lot of dynamic moving parts. I wonder if we could talk a little bit kind of more about that too, as well, as far as the actual users of the system of being, like I said, those young individuals who don't have who aren't as skilled or trained as those who might otherwise be using similar types of systems.
Sure. Sure. Interestingly enough, in our earlier days, we got to develop a lot more of those, operator control type panels and talk to operations and talk to the staff. As our company has grown, ironically, so much of that now is dictated by an end user. Disney has a standard universe. I mean, like these large corporations, like this is what we want to standardize across the entire platform. But that all still kind of feeds into the, okay, well, we're going to work on another project that is not quite financially there, but do we take those learnings? Do we think that through that process through the same way? I mean, again, it's working the same problem as, I'm going to give my grandmother this. How would she know how to operate it, right? I mean, and what's interesting is that just over the years, people's understandings of user interface have drastically changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know how to use a telephone, but we know how to use an iPhone. I mean, like it's just there's generational gaps here on user control. We take a lot of that in consideration, but at the end of the day, it's so laser focused on what the customer really ultimately wants, and who they really are. I mean, we really deep dive into that, to make it, you know, too many options is a bad thing. Very much simplifying it so they can't get themselves into a situation that they can't get themselves out of. But under the hood, they can still create and do anything, within reason. I don't think I really answered your question. Um,
No, that makes it. I mean, particularly the user interface piece of
yeah,
it, yeah, the telephone versus the iPhone, and even just in the last 5, 6 years or so, the expectations that people have had of, I don't know, increased simplicity, maybe it is,
yeah,
of just trying to strip away anything that might appear to be unnecessary in certain ways. And I'm only thinking of like. I'm thinking like ordering DoorDash of like or
sure.
ordering something
Yeah,
on Amazon, right? And that's my comparison, right? And that's a lot of
yeah.
people's comparisons these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we're working on a project right now where it's a bunch of showrooms around the world. They want the control very simple, straightforward, but the reality is that it's going to get deployed all around the world, and we need to figure out how we can keep that consistent with languages and just the interpretation of the logic. And it becomes a regional challenge. And then we have to understand, is this in front of guests? Do we need to think through ADA and the colors of the interface? There is a lot that goes into user interfaces if they're public facing, rather than just this is a technical interface or technical, you know, individuals. Even ride control operators, they're technical people, and they're operating a technical machinery. They need to know when it's safe, if they can proceed, and remove any potential excuse of something not going to plan.
Well, and Evan, all this talk of technology makes me think of how fast technology is progressing, right? You could
Yeah,
start a project and whatever you are using could be obsolete by the time you're finished the project. So
100%.
at some point, you've got to just say, this is what we're using and we're going to go forward with it. But how do you kind of stay on top of that without saying, oh, we're going to go the next one, the next one? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Sure. Yeah,
being able
it's
to.
interesting, because there's a lot of industry standards. I mean, Lauren from Alcorn was on right not too long ago, and she's in charge of a company who's been creating a product that has evolved over time. But at the end of the day, it functions the same as Steve created it when he was at WDI. And we're still using that hardware every day. It's just advanced from, the technology has changed, but the form and purpose has not. And in all honesty, I mean, obviously technology is moving fast, but the reality is that just some of our the global economics are dictating so much of the change in the technology. And what that really means is accessibility, or the accessibility to parts. Just things are moving so fast from that standpoint. COVID obviously changed a lot of things for a lot of people, but in the hardware and in the entertainment sector, we had a lot of product that companies said we're going to build this for the next 15 years, and then they decided, you know what, this doesn't make sense, we can't get these parts. Tariffs, all of those things really affected, honestly, the how technology is advanced in our specific industry. We want things that are going to run forever, and the challenge with things like Alcorn, for example, that will run forever, they have to maintain that hardware that way for forever, because they don't want to say every 6 months. When you look at a consumer product, the turnover of a product of an iPhone is a year, right? We have a new one every year, and that's their strategy to continue to move hardware. In our industry, we want these things to last for 20 years, and we need spares. So while we are on the outsides and we get to do a lot of cool immersive projects and a lot of things that may stand up for a couple of years, and that's okay, that's where we get to try all of this new cool tech. But when I know that we need this project running for 20 years, our team's like, no, we're using Alcorn, we're using this, we're using that. These things are bulletproof, and we know that we're going to be able to support this long after this project is over. So it is interesting. I wish our industry was moving faster as far as technology, but it's okay. It is okay, because what we are doing are things that need to last forever. And if we were designing and this hardware wasn't available, we'd have some really upset customers, because their capex is, we got to run this for 20 years, 30 years.
I feel like I'm riding Carousel of Progress right now, and I'm seeing like the technology in real time get more and more advanced, right?
Yeah.
But on the topic of technology, I can't help but be curious how AI is influencing your business strategy, or whether it is something that it helps improve what you do, or if it's a hindrance to it.
Sure. I think that obviously it's a touchy subject with a lot of people in the entertainment industry, especially in the arts side. Our approach has been, it's a tool in a toolbox. You can use a hammer to open a box, not ideal, but you use the wrong tool in the wrong place. You overuse a tool. I mean, but if you have that mindset that you're driving it, it's not replacing anything. It is making you efficient. We don't drive sports cars because they're slow. They're fast. I mean, and that's what AI allows people to do, is move faster, automate things. But at the end of the day, they're still driving. We did we think it's the very first AI museum project. It's College Football Hall of Fame, which was a really, really fun project and a pretty interesting experiment at the end of the day. It takes the guest, it takes their pictures, and museums are fantastic. They're great. You can look at artifacts, you can learn about it. But what museums, rarely do is put you into a scene or into a situation. World War II Museum does a great job of that. For example, you're following a journey. You're understanding what the people during that time went through. College Football Hall of Fame is very much the same, where we're gonna take your picture and we're gonna put you right into that situation. And that was a project that we started from scratch, from an AV control standpoint, and worked with a partner out of New Zealand, and an amazing creative production firm, and some executive producers. And we went through that project, and the reason it was a very fast track project. But at the end of the day, we were able to move so fast to complete that project. I think the whole thing took us maybe 5 to 6 months from start to finish, which is pretty unheard of. But AI was a big part of that, leveraging just the automation side of the artwork and generating it and processing it and data and all of that. It was key. So, do we see it, replacing what we do? I mean, from a software development side, there is a lot of efficiencies. Is it going to take over and make me an attraction? Probably not. So time will tell, but it will never create or replace, heart and ambition and curiosity. And honestly, it's the failures that bring out great ideas. It's mistakes that spark new ideas. And when the machine always gives you the right answer, there's no creativity,
So, Evan, thinking about your career, do you have any favorite mistakes or favorite failures that have really taught you things over the years?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a pretty big. I mean, I may be the chief of big ideas, but boy, I I make a lot of mistakes. And all of them, some of them I have to make several times before I really learn them. There's a lot that I didn't know about business going in. That there's mistakes that have pivoted, verticals for us to different, different opportunities.
I'll ask the flip side of it. I mean, sure you would probably say you're very proud of all the projects and all the ideas,
Mm.
but curious if there are any in particular that stick out that are worth really shining a spotlight on.
College Football Hall of Fame was a really great project. We're really proud of that in the sense that we had a company that had that they had done a mock-up, a little proof of concept, and we had a customer who said, I need this to run forever, and I need this not to be implemented with just parts from a website. I need real hardware. I need something I can buy tomorrow from anybody, and then we went to work. And there was a lot of custom stuff that was built on the back end. The team really did an amazing job. And at the end of the day, whatever piece of hardware on that project fails, that customer can go and call anybody and get it, and then put in some custom software, and it is back online. And what we see in those situations and those projects typically are we're going to get some sort of development hardware, and it may be, an Arduino, or it's not really, it's not compatible with IT. I mean, like we see all of that kind of stuff, mock-up-y hardware get installed for permanent installs. And it's when we can deliver something that is robust and widely accessible. I mean, those are real huge hurdles that a lot of people can't get over. So I'm super proud the team was able to develop and deliver a project like that. Um, there's a big theme park down the street that just opened. We had a lot of involvement in that. Our team worked tirelessly, countless hours on that project, and they're really proud of that. There's a lot of other projects that happen in another theme park that we're also really proud of. I'd really love to talk about it. I'd really love to keep those customers as clients. So,
So
um,
we won't ask any
sure.
follow-up questions on that, but I would like to ask
Yeah.
though, Evan, you've mentioned your team quite a bit throughout this conversation, and can you talk a little bit about, I guess, leading a team of technicians and creatives and that type of thing? Because I think it's probably different than, leading your 18-year-old ride
Sure.
operator, right? So can you
Sure.
talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So at the end of the day, we have, the company's grown. We have departments, we have department managers, and one of the challenges, that I have leading them is reminding them at the end of the day, because they are so amazingly passionate and they get in the weeds, to the point where, like, this project's really frustrating, and here's why. We shouldn't do this work for these customers. It happens. I mean, it just happens. And I remind myself, it's like, well, because they care, they care about these projects, they care about the outcome, they care about what they produce. There's always frustrating speed bumps along any project. But at the end of the day, this company, this industry, it exists because of projects. Without projects, without the next attraction, without the next expansion, there is no just running ROI that just someone's paying us because we're cool and we're here. It's because of these projects. It's because the sales team is out there understanding what is in the pipe and where we go and what is our plan. So one of the biggest strategy is to keep and the challenge is to keep the team focused on the projects there are on, while we are understanding what is next and what is coming, and then giving that team the time off, because none of these projects are simple, none of them are easy. Most of them, most of the team, their brains are mush by the time they're done. They need a little time off, and then we need to get them on the next thing, because that's just there's no it was interesting. There was a really great interview with Billy Corbin, the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins. It's like, there's no Valhalla for musicians, right? You have a hit and you're at the top of the mountain, and then you're not, and it's the next hit, and and while it's not exactly the same industry, it is 100% the same, as far as, you're only as good as your last project, and when that one's done, you need another one. So, and in the industry we sit, we're lucky enough that we've got lots of different verticals. It's not just themed entertainment; it's the one we love, but we're looking at all aspects of, how do we surprise and delight, um, and it'd be cool in AV, right? So, but that's one of the biggest challenges, to just keep the team understanding that, we have to get through this project. It has to be great, and we have to take some time off, and we have to get to the next one. It's just, it's just the way it is.
So even though brains might be mush at the end of a
Yeah,
project, I've got to imagine that the mush resolidifies a little. I don't know if I like that metaphor, but
it does.
being
No, it totally does. Yeah.
of then seeing it in real time, seeing reactions from guests, seeing the final product in now kind of all of its glory, and I'm curious what that
Yeah.
feeling is like.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, it's euphoria, right? I mean, that's the dopamine hit that we've been working on for the last 6 years. I mean, it's super cool to, watch kids and grandmothers, and like, they ultimately are appreciating what you did, and they don't know you, and that is magic that you don't get out of, most of the jobs that are out there at the end of the day. I mean, we really, really love, seeing people be happy with what we've created. Have a moment in time where, I mean, that is what is magical about Main Street. It doesn't matter how old you are. You walk down it, and it is a snapshot in time that it will never not be, a delight. How do we capture that over and over and over? And that's why we don't do conference rooms. Those are not moments of, there's no dopamine hit in a conference room. But there is at a nighttime spectacular, or, a parade, a museum, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Evan, we are winding down here, but I wanted to
Sure.
go back to some of the things you talked about in the beginning. You said you sold popcorn and you were a tour guide and that kind of thing. I'm curious, what kind of things have you taken from those early experiences that you're still using now in terms of the stories that you tell and the products that you are able to deliver?
It's a great question. So on the popcorn front, right? It was for me, it was a strategy to get inside of a corporation. It was I was 15 years old. There was no way I was going to be a technician. I mean, I knew everything I needed to do to be in that role, but there was no way Disney was bringing me in at that age. Now, 17, they did. There was that day from, I was selling popcorn, and then the next day I was at a stage mixing audio. I mean, like, that was pretty great. When that manager was like, "Wait, you're going where? You're making how much?" And I said, "This is kind of how it works." And luckily I was in a court, in a company that saw the ambition of a young kid, and was willing to give him a shot. And I have a lot to thank Disney for that. That's not, that doesn't happen everywhere. When you're young, working for corporations or working for other company owners, there's actually a lot more that I've learned. When I was a younger employee, the things that I understood, how companies worked, or whatever their priorities were, it wasn't until, there were 40 plus employees here that took me back to those times where it's like, well, this is how I had that outlook as an employee. And here, now that I'm running a company, the perspective has completely changed. And it's really not, honestly, any of the technical journey. It's really been the managerial, and the entrepreneur path that has really, I've grown in, and look back at some of those earlier days, where it's like, yeah, that was a really bad decision on my part, or an assumption that I made, that now that I'm seeing a bigger, the bigger P&L, and responsible for people getting paid every week, it's a much, much different outlook, and the risks that I would take if I was younger versus now are, and our employees would probably be like, "Oh no, you still take all these risks every day." But they are a lot more calculated. I'm usually 4 or 5 steps ahead. trying to look out for the pitfalls, and understanding the risk. But, I mean, running a company is nothing but risk, right? So,
Mm.
yeah, if I had to really quantify any of it, it's pretty much, the mistakes that I made younger, in my career were very much, really realized much later, in operating the company.
Evan, this has been such a fascinating conversation. We really appreciate just you spending some time with us, and we're coming close to the end of our time together here. But if people want to learn more about forward-thinking designs, if they want to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
So check out our website. It's forwardthinkingdesigns.com. We tried to buy ftd.com, but that's apparently not for sale. You can send an email to me directly at evan@forwardthinkingdesigns.com. If I don't respond, then you should send an email to info, and someone will actually, jump on it. But that would be info@forwardthinkingdesigns.com as well. And we're here in Orlando, in Windermere, Ocoee. If you're here, if you're in town, you're in the neighborhood, stop by. We're always open.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan. We'll make sure
Yeah.
all that information gets in our show notes. And like Josh said, it's been a great conversation. Really appreciate the time you've been able to spend with us and all the insights you've been able to share. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.